Dad's favorite song, Jade.
Hey, Jade.
Hi. It's gonna be karaoke hour. No. Miss you guys, I miss you too. Oh.
We do have matching shirts on.
She has good taste. How's Evan doing? Oh! So he has to just do the Sawyer's on. How do you add him?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, you hit that yet?
Chris, just asked to be invited.
Oh, yeah, there you go. There you go. Hello.
Hi guys.
Hey.
How's it going?
Great. Yeah, well.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Good, good, good. I'm going to set this up on the stand so I can hear you a little bit better. Just hang on a second.
Totally.
Hey,
Getting all technical here. What's up? It's all good.
yeah.
Down in the cellar right now, so feeling nice and cool down here,
Nice.
you know?
Nice.
Yes.
We're here at the winery, so.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by yesterday to drop off the wines. What a thrill to just have you come by and to just chill out, you know, for a few minutes.
Nice.
Let's see here.
It's
Trying
nice
to
to
set
do
this.
virtually.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I know what I'm doing wrong here. Duh. Hang on a second. I'll get set up here. Oh boy. I forget what Instagram is a little bit different than the other ones, so
Oh, yeah, so it
that's
takes a
that's
little bit of.
because it's up versus sideways.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a little bit like
Yeah.
confused.
Yeah. It doesn't let you do a horizontal picture.
Correct. So hang on a sec. Oh, I see it. There it is. Okay. Where do I connect here? Hang on. Well, so anyways, I just got done judging a day full of wonderful wines at the Sonoma County Harvest Fair.
Oh, nice.
And boy, it was interesting. You know, a lot of great rosés, a lot of. I tasted a Chardonnay that blew my mind out. I mean, seriously, it tasted like a great Merceau. And I was like, oh, who made this? I don't know. Maybe it was Katie for all that matter. You know? But it's crazy. It was a fun day of judging. Really nice judges, and you know, we got another day tomorrow too.
Nice,
Very
that's
cool.
exciting.
Been busy, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
No problem, and it was great. I got home in time, so now I just got to set this sucker up. Hang on one second, and I'm ready to go. Okay, I think I'm ready.
Awesome.
There we go.
Looking
Yeah,
good.
nice,
Great.
nice. All right. So, well, thanks once again for having me on. What a treat. And to taste these wonderful, wonderful wines, too. I'm really excited about this. And, you know, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Chris Sawyer. Hi, everyone. I've been writing about, you know, wines for 30 plus years, and I've been a national writer for that long, and also as a international sommelier who works for a lot of great people. I'm a big fan of Katie Wilson, so I just want you guys to all know that before we get all crazy here.
I'm kind of a
Katie rock. Obviously, you know that, duh. But and I think everyone else tuning in should too. But it's just what a great opportunity to really just talk about your wines, because you know I think that the greatest thing about you and I is just how we met through Ross, one of our great super pals. I mean, Ross is like beyond belief how lucky we are to know that guy, and you know, it's just what a fun opportunity for all of us, you know, and how we followed each other, and for me to be on your little show, and I want you on my show, and obviously this is all good stuff, you know, and how it goes. But drinking your wines is never a problem of mine, you know. So good, yeah.
Yeah, so
So,
we're really excited. We just have our fall release out now. So
okay,
there's a link in our bio
okay,
to sign up for the mailing list for everybody out there. So
okay,
once people sign up for the mailing list, there's an allocation that you'll get. And so we're going to taste a few of those wines with you today. So
great.
we have the Chardonnay in our glass. Do you have the glass full, Chris?
I'm working on it
Nice.
right.
There you go.
Let's see.
So this is the H Club Vineyard.
Oh yeah, this is gonna happen, you guys.
Yes.
Whoop, 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 whoop. Yep.
So this is only the second vintage of this wine.
Okay.
We worked with Ted Klopp and his daughter Lauren Klopp Williams in planting this vineyard.
Okay.
So you mentioned Ross, and so Ross,
Yeah.
myself, and Noah from Reed Wines, the three of us, all work together with Ted and Lauren in planting the vineyard. So we all share,
Wow.
which is really great. So we were part of choosing the clones. So
Great.
this blend is Old Wente and Mount Eden clones.
Wow. So Mount Eden, how great is that?
Yes.
You know, Mount Eden is such a fascinating, winery in general. If you guys know, if the listeners out there don't know Mount Eden and where it's located, I think that the most important thing about it is it's really looking at Silicon Valley, in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And it's such a fascinating place because, it gets warmth. I mean, don't fool around. I mean, it can be warm there, but it's also high up above. And so it really has that nice balance. It might be warm at certain points, but it's going to be also cool, and then it's going to actually be warmer in the evening because it's higher up. And so I think that's a really interesting thing. And then you've got to go back to the Mary Edwards clone of Pinot Noir from that same one too, clone 37, which I freaking love that clone.
Yeah.
And it's like the weirdest clone ever because it can actually grow in a little bit hotter area because it was trained there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting thing about how this works. And obviously the Wente clone, Livermore is a little bit hotter than Sonoma County, just as a general rule. But it's an interesting place too, because when you put it in a cooler climate area here, how these kinds of clones can really kind of adapt to the area. I think we know that the most because of, some of the, they're not really the clones, they're special selections like the Swan selection and the Calera selection. So they were brought here and then planted, and then they started adapting to where they were at. And so I think that's a really good example of what you guys were thinking when you planted these grapes. I mean, what an amazing idea and a very tasty example of that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it definitely makes sense. Like what you're saying is it's totally adapted to our much cooler area. When we're harvesting this, it is the final pH is only 3.15.
Wow,
It's
crazy.
almost all the way through malolactic fermentation.
That's weird science, you guys.
I know.
Whoa!
So it's definitely really acid driven, a lot of flavor and character in this wine. And so we planted the rootstock in 2014, but we didn't do the first harvest till 2017. So we left it in rootstock for a few extra years.
Wow, interesting. That's an interesting thing.
Yeah, we really it was kind of during the drought. We wanted the roots to really gain traction and be very well established before we grafted on. So definitely left it on a little bit longer, and then that way our vines were well established when we grafted and when we did our first harvest. So
I love it.
This wine at such a young age of vines is so complex and really interesting. Yeah.
No, I love it. I'm tasting it out of a Burgundy glass just like you are. I mean, this is sometimes if you really care about a Chardonnay, give it some respect. Taste it out of good stemware, and, it really does make a difference. I mean, when we do the competitions, we don't get all the right stemware all the time. But, like I said, I did taste an amazing Chardonnay today. We did send it to the final round. I do not know how it'll do, but man, that was a killer. But this is the same kind of thing, just off the nose. I mean, I get so many interesting notes here. There's a lot of red fruits. There's a little bit of, it's not as citrusy as a lot of things can be, especially if you're from Carneros. But this one really has a really amazing thing about a lot of fruit in there that's packed in there. There's like kind of that really nice apple and almost golden delicious, which I've got a little part in my heart for, especially when it's with Chardonnay. And I think that also there's a little nutty character there on it. It's almost like a pecan thing that's going on, and I like it a lot. You know, I'm a nut. Don't get me wrong. You know, but it's funny because we were talking today. I don't know if any of the listeners out there are going to get really into this right now, but if you go hiking, the greatest thing ever is M&Ms with nuts inside of them, so you can kind of soak, like you pop one, you're hiking, you made it another half mile, and now you're like letting that candied flavor kind of melt down into the chocolate flavor, and then you eat the nut, and then you get the protein, and you're so smart for doing that. So, I think that that's really what the complexity of a great wine should be doing it to you too. Like, it's going to open up good, but what comes out of that eventually is really what you're looking for,
Yeah.
That's why good stemware does matter, you guys.
It's true. So this is aged for 17 months in barrels. So I age my Chardonnays for quite a long time in barrels because I do feel that
well, that went down the wrong way. Ooh, yeah. Ooh. Wrong pattern there. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Woo. Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
All good.
Yeah.
But
I think it's just having to hold it up at a certain angle that's a little bit different than usual. Like, and I don't need to go like this, do I? No. No double handing. No.
But for me, the extra time in barrel definitely allows the oak to integrate very well. And I feel like I get a lot of that mid-palate texture from extra time on lees.
Yeah.
So this was on original lees for almost a year. So
that's fantastic. I mean, I think that, that's what really thrills me about tasting the wines that you and Ross make. I mean, what I really want to tell everyone out there, if you don't, I mean, you might know Katie, and we know Katie. That's why we're tuning into the show. We love her, and we love these wines, and this is awesome. But, I think that one of the great things about Katie is that she is actually a partner with Ross, and they're two great winemakers that think and share information with each other. They also have great friends, and believe me, we could go through that for another hour and a half about all their great friends and who have taught them lessons, and they've taught lessons too. But I think that the most important thing here is focus. Focus on details. Focus on finding these things. And I think your winemaking technique has always been so impressive to me. I want to taste Chardonnay when I taste Chardonnay. I want to taste what does the grape taste like?
yeah.
I mean, that's a really important thing. You have certain clones here, but it's not heavy-handed winemaking. I think that's really where I'm going with this. You can put them in certain barrels and things, but I really don't like wines where I feel like I paid for that barrel.
Yeah.
That really bothers me when the barrel is that big that it really is the thing I'm thinking about first. And that's not what I'm thinking about with this one. I feel like this is the real deal. This is the real fruit, and I really get it. You're just giving it little accents here, and texture is what you're doing with this barrel program. And I think that's really, really fascinating. So, I mean, the other thing is, too, I mean, the alcohol level on this is very low, in comparison to a lot of these Chardonnays that come in at 14.7. They're good sometimes, but I mean, what can you pair them with? I mean, about this many things versus this many things, which is really what you want. And I think it's really tasting good right now. And I mean, I don't want a bunch of butter in that sauce right now. I want to taste the fish. I want to taste that, how good it is. I might even want a little bit of sushi first, because I want purity in my flavors, and I want to just really taste the plate.
Yeah.
I think that that's a great thing. So I think that, Katie, for one thing for everyone, and I've always wanted to ask you this question on the air, like, what the hell got you into the wine industry? I mean, how did you get so good so fast? I know your dad, and man, he makes the best jerky ever. If you guys could all taste his jerky, don't you agree? I mean, that's the greatest jerky ever. But I mean, you came out of just what was your love for this? And I mean, I feel it in the glass. That's the thing. But How did you get started?
So I really started with first and foremost agriculture. So for me, my love of wine came through that path. My dad has my mom and dad have a walnut orchard. So I grew up in farming, but not in wine at all. Back then, they didn't even drink wine, which is crazy to think
No,
about
geez.
now because they have a wine cellar and everything now. But I went to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, so I
Oh,
started with wine.
go Mustangs! Mustangs, right?
Mustangs. Yeah, so I started with agricultural business as my major. So I knew I wanted to work in agriculture. I knew I wanted to be involved in farming in some way. And my freshman year in Ag Business 101, they were talking about different things you could do, and they started talking about wine. I was like, that's it. I know what I want to do. And I was 18, and it wasn't just because it was alcohol. For me, it was really that it's agriculture, but you're actually taking something, and there's a lot of science, a lot of creativity.
Oh, yeah.
Every vintage is different. And you're not just like growing something that you ship off, like walnuts, you never see it again. But you're taking that and you're creating something out of it that's something that's alive, and every decision you make along the way changes how it turns out. And so I really immersed myself immediately in wine. And I did a double major, so I have a degree in wine and viticulture as well as agricultural business. And then I wanted to work in every aspect of the industry. So I worked in a vineyard for a season. I worked in a tasting room for a few years, and then I started traveling, and I did flip-flop harvests for 2.5 years. So I did Australia and New Zealand. I worked at Joseph Phelps in Napa, working with the Freestone fruit, which was my very first introduction to the little pocket of Sonoma Coast that I love so much. I ended up at Flowers, so that's kind of a short version of how it all came about. But for me, is
that where you met Ross? Was at Flowers?
Yeah, so that was the first that Ross and I worked together. And it's interesting because, Ross and I have never worked on each other's projects. Like, I've never been involved with Cobb, and he's never been involved with LaRue. But we have worked on a lot of projects together over the years, and it's been, it's really cool to kind of have that dichotomy of how we do things differently and then work together on some projects. So, yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I just, it's such a fascinating thing. I grew up here in Sonoma County. I was born and raised in Santa Rosa. I grew up in Russian River Valley. So, for me, and watching how this area has totally evolved is amazing. I mean, when I moved out of Santa Rosa proper, when I was a freshman in high school, it was a population of 83,000. And I mean, obviously it's doubled that. And wine was actually not really that important back then. And now it's like the thing why, we do so well here in Sonoma County. And I was very lucky to go to UC Davis and really kind of fall into it in a strange way, because I was actually the music critic at UC Davis, and I had my radio show that a lot of winemakers go, man, Sawyer, you totally taught me about the Pixies and Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that, and and Beck, but back in the early '90s. But it was really when I got assigned to write stories about wine and the viticulture and enology program there at UC Davis that my life really changed, and going in this direction. And this was a really big time period for me. Even though I had grown up with it, I didn't really think I was going to be part of the wine industry. I mean, I used to ride my BMX bike out there, and the old farmer that had the rock salt and the bullets that would fly in the air and stuff, and whatever. But where we've come here in Sonoma County, I think that's why tasting Sonoma Coast to me, and Russian River are so important. I mean, I live here in the Petaluma Gap area, and it's actually the appellation that I named. I named it 20 years ago, and it was a really great thing that I didn't think it was going to be an appellation, but here we are. And I think that these are the kinds of things that we've found out, but it's also where we've gone with growing grapes. I mean, the grapes now are the highest quality grapes we've ever had in California. And I think that's why you coming on and Ross, of course, and so many other great budding, winemakers that really have done such a great job of showing really is the potential here in California. And I think we're on a different scale completely than we were when I was at UC Davis. And I mean, even today in tasting through the Harvest Fair wines blind and really giving a lot of gold medals and even some double golds, you're like, oh man, I want to know who made this wine. This is really good. And it's just a great thing because, even the fact that we can think about where we are and the position of these vineyards. And in this case, you really got to help these people really make those decisions.
Yeah.
I think that's really something. You go back to Paul Sloan and some of these guys, the small vine kind of concept of putting the grapes in the ground and really caring about that, being the scientist first and really kind of putting the grapes in the ground and really helping the people whose property it is. In this case, this amazing wine. Oops, sorry, wrong one here. Here we go. Yes, once again. And the great LaRue label, we can't forget that. But, the Klopp vineyard, and just when you hear Klopp, I mean, the first thing you think about, I do, is Mary Edwards and the things that she did with the Klopp family and putting them on the map. But, these vineyard designates were not around back when I was a kid, and it really has changed so much. I think this is a really great example of a fantastic world-class, Chardonnay that really has good biting acidity, but also tastes exactly like Chardonnay. It has a lot of stuff going on, and that's why after we get off the air, I will continue to drink this for quite a while as it opens up,
Nice, nice. Oh, I also wanted to mention, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask in the question box.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that Chardonnay has just been an amazing thing. And I mean, I'm right there with, if there's some of our viewers out there that say, anything but Chardonnay, the ABC rule, and I was right there with them, back in the early parts of the 2000s. The wines just weren't that great. In fact, I mean, if you fell in love with Chablis, that's a little bit different, but we weren't making anything like that here. And someone today, Laura Ness and I, who's a good writer, and I were talking about the kind of really how Oregon really did it. And you look back at Josh Bergstrom and some of the great producers up there, Brickhouse, and these great people, and really what they were doing, and they all wanted to make Burgundy. And they didn't start making great wines until they figured out, what, we don't need to make Burgundy. We need to make Oregon, Willamette Valley wines. Yeah. I think we've had such a good opportunity here in Sonoma County because I think we were ahead of that curve. And I mean, there are so many sub-regions here that are very, very important to us. And I think with my, my wine program at the Gravenstein Grill and, the things I write about and, people advising people and showcasing things. I have so many tools to work with now as far as Chardonnay goes. I mean, you could get butter bombs. I mean, that's for sure. And actually, there are some decent butter bombs out there that really have oak that can really hold up, and they're probably a better wine if you really age them. And I mean, you look at some of the ones that are super really refined and really complex, and you're getting into the David Ramey house here, and the great David Ramey, love that man. But when you get into this nice complexity and freshness too, I mean, I think that that's a great term we should be talking about a lot more, and I think that's where we have gotten is this term freshness, because you want to feel like you're in Sonoma County when you're tasting this. And I think that this wine is a really great example of the Sonoma Coast because of that. Because I really do feel like I'm in Sonoma County and, in fact, the Sonoma Coast. And if you can feel like that, then you want some fish because Sonoma County, you guys, we're on the coast, and you want things that will really work with it. I might do a really nice piece of that, you might do yellowfin tuna or something like that, but I might throw on a little bit just because that spice and stuff, maybe some saffron rice instead of just regular rice. I want that little squeeze of lemon. Or maybe I could even do grapefruit rind, and not squeeze the grapefruit, but just put a little rind on top of that fish. And so thinking about these kinds of conceptual things, it's like the more you taste it, the better. And really right now, what I'm really into is because it's super pear season. We've got some pears out back right now, and so I'm thinking a lot about pear tart and some kind of things that are more savory dishes with pears, and how that could work as well. You get into pork and pear, a pear chutney with pork. That'd be very good. And as we get into, we're into the fall already. Unfortunately, I mean, it's crazy weather out there, you guys. I mean, if no one checked in lately, it's real weird out there. But I mean, I think that the fact is what we're doing, and in some ways, some really messed up ways, COVID-19 is very interesting because it's making us appreciate the wines that we do drink even more. It's giving us the time to actually appreciate them, and it's actually making us better chefs, to be really honest. So I think that's really the interesting thing about it. So it's everything is working together, and I think this is a good time to be just drinking as much good wine as we can.
Yeah. Cheers to
Here,
that.
here, cheers. Ching, ching. Yeah. Fantastic wine, though. I love it.
Move on to the Pinot.
Let's do it. So, I think the first thing about the Pinot Noir, and I mean, let's face it, Pinot Noir, Sonoma County, they just go hand in hand now. I mean, it's just, we were not there a long time ago. Pinot Noir was not that important in the United States in general. It really wasn't. I give a lot of credit once again to Oregon for helping with that. I just did a story on a really interesting story on Anderson Valley, but it wasn't just about Anderson Valley. It was actually about the Zinfandel there. If you think about the history of Zinfandel and why it's our state grape, I mean, even though there's only 4 million cases of Zinfandel made versus Pinot, which is much more expensive, Cabernet and all these kinds of things. They're much more expansive. But the reason it is because it was the testing grape. So you came in during the gold rush and you're like, yeah, interesting being down in the mines. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to make some wine. I'm going to find some grapes. I'm going to do this. And you really got into it. But the testing zone for Zinfandel that really impressed me the most, and I just did a story on this, was the Mendocino Ridge. And the Mendocino Ridge is so fascinating because it's kind of like a part of our Sonoma coast. It's just extended that way a little bit north of us. But it is actually where a lot of Zinfandel was planted back in the 1870s and 1880s in a cool climate area. Yeah. So you go out to Lodi, you go to Napa, you go to the Sierra foothills, hot. But Zinfandel could actually make it in these conditions, and it actually was a precursor to really the Anderson Valley boom that changed it, from, I think when I wrote the story on Anderson Valley back, 1983 was when they became an appellation. There were 56 acres of Pinot Noir, most of which was going to Roederer to make bubbly with, and it was not an important grape. Now there are over 3,000, so 56 to 3,000, that's a little bit of a growth. And it's the same thing here. The only Pinot that was here in Sonoma County when I was a kid, to be really honest, was going to Corbel, just to make bubbles. And bubbly, Gloria Ferrer wasn't here, Iron Horse wasn't really here, all these kinds of things were not happening. But here we are finding the true nature of Sonoma County and cool climate. And I think that's a really amazing thing about where Pinot Noir has come and where we've come as far as like a culture of wine, and why Pinot Noir is so important here in Sonoma County. Just like, hey, Napa Valley and Cab, no doubt, number one grape there, and with every great reason. We do have great Cabs here too, but they can't grow Pinot Noir like we can grow it here, and I think they respect us and we respect them. And that's where we're at. I'm doing a show with Chapelet on Thursday, and we're talking cabs, and now we're talking Pinots because it's all about us here in Sonoma County. And even Chapelet has great program that they do with Pinot Noir. And what I'm getting to here is that what really impressed me about this one is it says Sonoma Coast on here, but tell everyone a little bit about where the fruit comes from, because it's not from one site, it's from 3 sites that are really super duper cool. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that, Katie.
Yeah, so we actually, for the first time, have started putting the vineyards on the back label. So the Sonoma Coast Blend has always been a barrel selection.
Oh yeah.
Of my barrels that I feel are a little bit more fruit forward. This is meant to drink a little younger. It's meant to pair well with a lot of different types of food. It's definitely meant to be a food wine. But over the years, I just had my back labels pretty simple. And just with the 2018 vintage, we've decided to put a little update on the back labels. So it has the percentages of the vineyards, and it changes year to year as far as percentage goes, but it's always a barrel selection of my single vineyard wines. So it's Thorn Ridge, Rice Spivak, and Emmeline Ann vineyards. So all west, like on the western Sonoma coast. Yeah. Really great vineyards I've been working with for many years. Yeah. We also have put in the, we've added a signature on the back too of my. Very fancy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Little signature there, you guys. Right?
Yeah.
There it is. There it is.
People have been asking for that for years, so. Yeah. Yes, new updates. But yeah, so the Pinots are all aged for 20 months in barrel. So I aged the Pinots also for quite a long time. I'm treating every barrel different, and that's why as I'm treating every barrel as its own lot, so I don't rack them all at once. I'll do maybe if one barrel needs to be racked, I'll rack one barrel. I only have about 20 barrels total, so that makes it really easy for me to do very detailed work. And so by the time they're aged for 15 months, they're all very different. And that's about the time where I do my blends. And then I put them back to barrel for another few months and then bottle them about 5 months later. So these are, this is in this vintage, the biggest percentage is Thorn Ridge, and then followed by Rice Spivak and Emmeline Ann.
Can you tell everyone where they're kind of located? I know that isn't Rice Spivak part of the Petaluma Gap?
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken.
Where it is like overlaps into 3 different regions, but Sonoma Coast, and then it's like the very northern tip of the Petaluma Gap, and then I believe it's also overlapped with the Russian River too.
The southern part.
Yeah, the southern. I know it's so crazy. It can get really confusing for folks. Yeah. But these vineyards are 7 to 10 miles from the ocean. The furthest west in this blend is Emmeline Ann, and that is just outside of the town of Freestone, and about 800 feet elevation. Then you go a little bit further inland and south, so we're directly west of Sebastopol, is Thorn Ridge Vineyard. And then just south of that, where it's the upper part of Petaluma Gap, is Rice Spivak Vineyard. So Rice Spivak is south of Sebastopol.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just I've gotten really into these producers because of you, or the growers because of you, and obviously Ross. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that you two both do vineyard designates from these vineyards, and that I think this one really expresses that because it's got all 3 inside of one bottle, and I think that's really. It gives you those pictures where you probably do need the bottles of the individual bottlings at some point here too, because they're so great. But I think that this is such a lovely wine when it's young. And I mean, there's so many things going on in the mouth, and it's true Pinot Noir character, that really makes me energized and makes me realize, why Pinot Noir is so great. And I mean, it's not about power and like really sticking it in your mouth. It's really about this finesse thing that you've really picked up on here, and it gives me that kind of amazing earth kind of quality that's really more about what's in the ground. It's more that shell kind of thing, and when you get into the the kind of soils that we have in the Sebastopol and Occidental and Freestone areas out there, they're so different than any interior things that we have too. And we have 118 different types of soil in Sonoma County. That's more than the whole country of France. I mean, come on. So if we can't do great things with that, we certainly are pushing to find out if we can or we can't, and we've already found out we can. So that's the great thing about it, is that it's just a fascinating thing that I really get that kind of almost that kind of rockiness in here too, those pebbles and things like that that are really kind of standing out in this, especially when it's young here. It's got great cutting acidity. It's got that freshness once again, but you know, these kind of cherry notes and this kind of wild berry kind of flavor in here too it just opens up so much. And it's not the vineyard designates like you do with these same exact vineyards, but the fact is it's a combination, and a really amazing combination of all of them, that it's something that I would be pouring at a table where, you know, if I was the sommelier, which I am, but you know, where you go to a restaurant and you've got 4 people, you're all having something completely different, and you need one bottle of wine that's going to pair with all of them. This is it.
Yeah.
You know, this is why the blends from Sonoma Coast, especially from special vineyards like this, really do make a difference. And I feel like this is a great example of one of those that, and these are little special vineyards. A lot of, you know, our listeners out there might not know all these vineyards, but that's why I really want you to tell them a little bit about it. I just happen to know because I'm a nerd, but that's all right. But I mean, I feel like that's really you've got the character of each one of them inside one bottle, and that's why it's special, you know.
Yeah, they're definitely vineyards that are near and dear to my heart. But yeah, they are really small. Emmeline Ann is only 3 acres, and Rice Feedback is just under 7 acres, and then Thorn Ridge is closer to about 12 acres total.
Okay.
Yeah, so all really special vineyards out on the coast there. So.
Yeah, there's a really nice there's a spicy note to it too. There is that little bit of cola in there as well, that kind of cherry cola that kind of branches out just past cherry. You know, sometimes you get that from the Swan clone, especially, and sometimes you get the bigger kind of body thing from Pommard, where you get into that. And sometimes Oregon in particular, if you had like 2A in there, I always get the root beer barrel candy in it. How does that happen? I don't know. They just it must have 2A in it.
You hit 2 out of 3 of the clones on the head there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. There we go. Boom. I must not be that crazy. You know. What's the other clone?
So this is Pommard and 115 from Thorn Ridge, and then from Rice Feedback it's Swan and 667 and 115, and then from Emmeline Ann it's 115, and there's also a little bit of 777 in there too. So. Oh,
that's great.
Yeah.
So you've got the Dijons, you've got a little bit of the pocket ones.
Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, you know, the difference here, Dijon and what we're talking about, Dijon is actually anything with three digits. So you can be as nerdy as you want, and Pinot Noir is definitely the nerdiest of the nerd ones. But these were clones that were brought over from Europe and especially from the University of Dijon. And it was really started because of the University of Oregon and the Oregon producers. And, you know, lift a glass to them right now because I feel bad for our friends up there. They're really having a hard time. But it kind of goes into really why Oregon is so interesting, is that they're taking such risk every year. They are not as consistently warm as us here. I mean, Northern California, I mean, it's pretty much an 80-degree day most days, and especially once we get out to its coast, we're talking about 70-degree days. We just need a lot of sun is really the main thing. It's not about how hot it is, especially with Pinot Noir. It's about how much sun is hitting those vines and how the photosynthesis is happening. With Oregon, their problem is that they have a very short season, and it's about a month after we start budding, they start budding. So we're budding in, you know, April, and they're like May, and you're like, oh, wow, you just go up there and you're like, oh, that's as far as you guys have gotten, really? You know, and they couldn't really help it. So that's why these Dijon clones came in, is because they do have a shorter scale of how they ripen. But before that, the Pommard clone was really, you know, that's a UC Davis thing and how it came in. The Swan clone was more of a pocket clone, and what we'd call a special selection. Yeah. So it was brought over, and, you know, sometimes they just go to take pictures of the vineyards with the shears in their hands, and then, you know, they put it in this bag that just happened to be empty, and they just happen to have the shears. And it used to be when you could bring stuff back, just basically about anything back before 9/11 happened. Just put a bunch of stuff in your bag and just put it in the thing, and they check it at the airport. And nobody cares. But this is really how these things differ a little bit. So those 3 digits and the 115. That's why I kind of bring that subject up. Is the 115 is really one of the originals. The 113, 114, 115 were the originals that really came in. I mean, yes, 2A, which is a Swedish clone, or sorry, Swiss clone, not Swedish. And 1A, which actually Ross has at Coastlands, as you know, which is the weirdest of the weirds. And that's actually what Oregon's programs really started on, is 1A, even though there's none left. But it's really an interesting thing to go into this, because I really feel like these clonal selections really do show in here. That's why I was just like popping off at the mouth, but I must have been right.
Yeah. And I think especially the Pomard clone from Thorn Ridge is really interesting. So Ted originally got his cuttings for that from Tom Dellinger.
Okay,
and so,
one of the greats.
So he got that and planted Clop Ranch with that, and then he took cuttings from Clop Ranch to plant Thorn Ridge. So it's an interesting story there. And he planted Thorn Ridge in 1996. So got a bit of age on it. That vineyard is such a special vineyard, and really great to work with the Clops on 2 vineyards that I work with. So it's a great expression of Pomard there.
Yeah, I mean, when I think back about the history and how I kind of focused on Pinot Noir from Sonoma County in general, I mean, it really was in the mid-90s when I really kind of got onto it after I got out of UC Davis and I came back here. I worked with Michael Hirschberg, who was amazing. I mean, one of the greatest restaurateurs. I mean, back in the 90s, there were 2 restaurants you went to. You went to John Ash, and whatever John Ash made, you went to eat his food. And then any restaurant that Michael Hirschberg owned, you went there too. I luckily got to be his sommelier, and that was an amazing thing, is working with Michael Hirschberg. But, we did a lot of stuff with Dalinger, and I got to know Dalinger very, very well. We had an allocation of Dalinger that was sick. Nice. It was so good. And I mean, I was just thinking about some of the things, with Fred Shearer, who was the winemaker, and Fred Shearer is one of the greatest guys on the face of the planet. If you guys don't know his wines too, I mean, it's really why Katie is like the girl version of a Fred Shearer to me. Like a very talented person that you need to get to know, and once you do, you're going to be friends with for the rest of your life. And Fred Shearer and what they were really doing with those grapes back then was so cutting edge. I mean, it was just crazy. And then you go into Mary Edwards, and you go into some of these amazing producers, or Hansel for that matter, and what they were doing with the Wente clone of Chardonnay, and how it really happened here in Sonoma County. But I think the history here and what I've seen and how I've followed this, I mean, I feel like you just captured it in the bottle, and in my glass right here. I mean, that these things are all working inside this that really are great examples of those things that I just talked about, that these people, these mentors of ours, really helped us learn a lot about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay for that matter. But they're really such special people, because they were visionaries, and they were here in a place where, I mean, Sonoma County is beautiful. I mean, it's, every time that these fires start, it just kills me, because, things are it's not just the people and everything, but it's also the land is in harm's way. And I just, we're such a sacred place as far as I'm concerned. Northern California, we're very, very lucky. I mean, I'd say the same thing for, West Marin and up to, Mendocino County. We just have a very special place here. And the fact that people have been able to capture these things in the bottle, and especially with these amazing vineyards that, these 3 that you've got inside this glass are just killer vineyards. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Here. Cheers to that. Boom. Yeah, I mean, I just love the nose on this too. I mean, it's so deep, and every time the difference between a wine that's a good wine, good wine is a good wine, but it's not going to change that much in the glass. A great wine changes in the glass and continues to take you there. My first experience with wine of note was, I went to Petaluma High, and Winona Ryder was a very good friend of mine, and she
Oh,
wasn't that popular yet, but she would become a very popular person, and we used to watch a lot of movies together, and somehow we snagged a bottle of her parents' wine, and I tasted it. It was really when I was watching the movie with her, and it was Name of the Rose. I tell this story often, but Name of the Rose is a great movie if you've ever seen that with Sean Connery. It's
oh,
kind
wait,
of
wait.
a it goes back to the medieval times, and it gets super complicated and really wild. It's based on Umberto Eco's book, but it's a really interesting movie just because it gets so complicated, but the wine was getting to that stage too, and it was a French wine. It was actually ended up being Lynch Bage. Go figure. Yeah, yeah. I guess we stole, well, not stole, borrowed a really good bottle of wine. It's just because her brother couldn't buy us beer that night, so whatever. You
Did
know,
you guys
but
get in
it
trouble?
goes back to that kind of thing where you start realizing what a great wine is versus like that kind of wine that stood like this, and so then it started going downhill like balsamic vinegar. Now it's balsamic. Now it's just sucky vinegar. And now I wouldn't cook with this stuff. And, that's a bad wine. A
Yeah,
great wine is where you keep going like this. Woo-hoo.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one of those great examples. And like I said, the other thing about this is just a blend of three great vineyards, whereas you do these vineyard designates from each one of these. But sometimes this is the better wine. And I'll kind of go back to a really good story too about Anderson Valley, where we used to judge the competition up there. Well, we still do, but not this year because of obviously our conditions and COVID. But one year we chose a Pinot Noir that it just stood out from all the rest, and it was a brand called Launder, which I love that brand. Just I still do, but even though I've got a few bottles here, actually here's one right here. What do you know? Here's this 2005 Launderer.
Nice.
Really great. I might have to drink that soon. I know there's a good one here too. Another good one that's sitting right next to it. That's an old Cerise vineyard
Oh,
from
Oh yeah,
Canez.
nice.
I love
So that's not bad. These two
Well,
next to
yeah,
each
they
other.
come over after.
Um,
right.
but that's not shabby. And then I don't know why this was sitting there, but Dominus isn't bad either. But when you get into these things, that wine blew us away as a judging panel because what really happened is where it was hitting us in the mouth, and it was like all over the place, and I just really liked it. I kind of wanted to swallow it instead of spitting it. Which you judge, you really shouldn't do that.
Yeah,
At night after the competition's over, you will do that.
yeah.
But the fact is that I felt like it was such a great expression of it, and it ended up not being that's not their most expensive wine by any means. Launderer did all these vineyard designates, but this one was a composition of all of them together. It won the competition by the
Nice.
largest margin a wine has ever won that competition. It was
Wow.
like 78% of the votes went for that wine just because of how it appealed to so many different types of people. I think this is what this wine is all about too, is this is going to be, for those people that buy this wine out there are going to love it, and all the Psalms that buy it are going to love it because it's such a good, it's not a tool, but it's one of those things that you can take to a party, and so many people are just going to love it.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit there and like go, okay, like it's like a little genie thing, like, can you come out now? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. It is there, and it shows itself very, very well when it's young, but it's still like some of these Launderer wines and these other great ones like Ross makes and you make that are really amazing to follow through their lives, that they're still actually age-worthy too.
Yeah.
Even though they're not the vineyard designate that everyone, oh gosh, you got a little bit of that fruit, ooh. It's more like really how you put them together, and I think this is a really great example of putting together a fantastic wine inside the glass and from three different vineyards.
I agree.
Thank you.
I agree. Cheers on that one too.
No, the wines are definitely drinking really, really spectacular. Remind us again how people can order some or get to the.
Yeah, so people can go on there's a link in our bio that brings you to our mailing list sign up. And once you're on the mailing list, you get an allocation of these wines. And then our allocation's open until September 29th. So,
Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, I want to give a call out right now to Robin Kelly O'Connor. I see you, Robin Kelly O'Connor. Robin Kelly O'Connor, if you guys do not know this man, he's one of the greatest wine professionals in the world. He lives in New York, and he's my dear friend, and he just says, hello, Chris, and just, that's really touching because I love this man so much, and I can't wait till he comes back to, California to visit because we just have such a great time together. He's a very, very dear person. And, it's his passion for wine, just like my passion, your passion, both of you and everyone that's watching this show. This is what makes us happy. I mean, come on. Life is really weird right now, as if you didn't get that memo. It's really messed up, actually, technically.
We all got it.
Yeah. But, the fact is that we really, wine means even more to me than ever before. It's why sitting down here in the cellar and bringing people down the cellar, sip friendly though, of course, you got to be sip friendly. But, I think that this is a time of really sharing great wines with great people and appreciating what we've got. I think here in Sonoma County, we do have one of the greatest regions of the world. It's still young. I mean, hey, I think that's the greatest thing about Sonoma County is, like I was saying, back when I was a kid, Pinot wasn't diddly squat. Like no one knew anything about Pinot here except for Dalinger and a few of these other people. But it wasn't even on the radar. And look at where we've gone. Yeah. I mean, this is an amazing accomplishment, in California and in Oregon and in different places. I mean, I love Central Coast. I'll be judging the wines down there coming up, and I can't wait to taste more of their stuff. Yeah. They do a great job too. But this is what we have to provide for people, and I think that this LaRue brand is such a great brand for everyone, that knows and has a person like Katie who can just be there and tell the stories and is very proud of her wines, and she should be. These are just amazing wines. And now, I was just talking and me bantering on here. I just got this flavor in my mouth from this wine. It is so good. And it's not quite truffle, black truffle, but it is definitely kind of more like a black, kind of like a black mushroom kind of thing. And at the Gravenstein Grill we do pizzas, and I had some media people in there last night. We were tasting Grenache because Grenache is so great. And this is International Grenache Day is on the 18th, so don't forget that, everyone. And we had Mick Unti in with us, and he was doing so great. But we were pairing all these pizzas and everything. But that mushroom pizza would be so good with this. Yeah. And just as we get into this time of the year too, I think that this wine right here would be a really good candidate for definitely doing with mushrooms. And as we get into winter time, and the autumn is already here. There's so many leaves all over the place. Yeah. I mean, how many times can you rake, you guys? It's really happening right now. And I think that one of the great times I've had with mushrooms was with Jasmine Hirsch, and I was going to be doing a thing. Actually, it was at the World of Pinot Noir, believe it or not. Look, Wappen, at the World of Pinot Noir. And I went up to Hirsch, and Jasmine and I had an amazing walk through the vineyard. It was raining, and she was telling me all about Ted Lemon and all this stuff that was happening. It was so fantastic. And we just had a great time, but I was just kind of a little bit chilly going back because it was all rainy and stuff. And I went to the River's Edge, or what's the place out there? That's River's End. And I went there. I sat at the bar, and I had one of the best mushroom bisques I've ever had in my life, and it was just so great. This is that kind of wine that could really go well with that, especially with different mushrooms in there, because they're kind of almost reflective of the different vineyards, is the different mushrooms together. And I think the same thing with risotto. And so if you have great fish, or if you even have some of the red meats or even chicken and you have risotto with it, this would be great with it because
Yeah.
it just really matches up well. So, I mean, I think about food all the time, and great wines make me think about food often. And this
Yeah.
is a great wine, you guys. This is a very good clue. This is a great, great wine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, speaking of which, I better have some more.
Yeah, better pour a little bit more in your glass.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. No, I really appreciate you getting me on the air too. I mean, it's just so fun talking about great wines. But you know, when you called me, Katie, I was like, oh, what was Katie need? What did Katie need? You know, you're not an average person. You're way beyond that. So it was great having you here yesterday and dropping off the wines, and you know, you could see my house, and you know, I get to follow you on Facebook and Instagram, and we're great friends. And you know, I can't wait to do one of the, like I said, I'm getting you on the air too
Yeah, definitely.
for the varietal show with Sawyer Som.
Nice, nice.
Soon, but I want to do it with you and Ross together.
Yeah.
I think that would be the most interesting one because, you know, really talking about you guys and even an approach to like maybe 3 different wines that are from vineyard designates and why
Yeah.
they're so different from one another. But Ross is a dear friend of ours, and he linked us together, and you know, he's just one of those gifted guys, and you're so gifted too, that he was a very smart person for, you know, really building a bond with you. And I think that as we progress, you know, building a bond with the LaRue wines is a big deal in my life too. You know, I've got LaRue wines in this cellar, believe me.
Nice.
It's sitting down here, and the cellar is not, I mean, the cellar is very big around here. So I mean, there's a lot of LaRue wines in this cellar. Good.
Cheers. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today too. And tasting
Absolutely.
the wines. It's awesome to get your thoughts on the wines, and
Yeah.
some really great food pairings there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have such a great time doing what I do. I mean, talking about wine is the easiest thing I've ever done. But it's just, I mean, it's built into my head.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't like sit there with books all the time. I actually was just out there doing it. And I feel like you're a great example of someone that's really done, just really put your head down and just done it.
Yeah.
You know, you're a Mustang. I understand that. Slow, you know, and the great, you know, Cal Poly grad, just as I'm the Aggie, you know, from University of California, Davis. But, you know, I think that really when we get into this, I mean, really, there's so much to learn. If you and I knew everything, if the 3 of us knew everything, it would be so great. I mean, and where you work at Palma's, I mean, like, that's one of the great wineries of California, too. I mean, that technology there is so ridiculously cool.
We do like our data over at Palma's, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, but I mean, you get it. I mean, like, this is why I think it's also why there's a lot of people out there that are big cab fans, and I think that cab, but they're starting to learn so much more about Pinot Noir. And you know what got them there? It's food. It's not just the movie Sideways, believe me. Even though the movie Sideways did help with the sales of Pinot Noir quite a bit, 70% increase the first year after the movie came out because guys finally started drinking Pinot Noir, which was very different.
1 minute.
Oh yeah, we're there.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, thanks once again for having me on, you guys.
That's crazy. The Instagram live is about to cut us off, so we should. Do you have any final thoughts for us?
Just how much I just love the LaRue wines. That's all I want to say. I love LaRue. I love Katie and what she does, and I buy these and I hang out with these, and this is just what I want to say. It's my statement wine of the day.
Thank you for joining us, and yes, for everybody out there, you can follow the link in our bio to sign up for the mailing list and get in on our fall release. But thanks for joining us so much.
Everyone.
Awesome. Cheers.
Cheers. Ching.